back for another episode. We are down one today with Juan out playing Vigilante Cop or Rambo or something. I'm not entirely sure. So we're going to continue talking about building your car or designing your build. And I think Corey left us in a good place last week with designing balance, right? And I'll kind of start off with what I've been going on this week. I think it's a good jumping in point. Choosing the right chassis to begin with. We have gotten a ton of requests this week for things that are possible, because anything's possible, as Cody and Corey both well know, with enough welding and plasma cutter, but it doesn't make it practical, right? So like turbocharging a 3-cylinder 2013 Mirage, for example, you know, your entire base platform is just not built for it. Your transmission, a lot of guys overlook that. You're asking to jump up to 300 horsepower from a car that from the factory put out 74 horsepower on a dyno. The entire drivetrain would have to be changed out, right? You're not thinking about that. So it's not just, hey, custom turbo manifold, custom turbo, custom exhaust, custom intercooler, custom fuel system, custom ECU. Now your transmission swap, drivetrain swap, half shaft or axle swap, like it becomes this domino effect, and before you know it, you're in more money than the car is worth to begin with. So I think selecting your chassis is a key aspect to building your car.
Well, like you said, you know, with all of that stuff that people don't really think about, there's other small things that people definitely don't think about. You know, one of the main ones being, you know, bracing everything. You know, having to build your own transmission brace to get everything to fit. I mean, I think I probably spent at least, I would say, a solid 36 hours of my life underneath your RX-7, pulling out your transmission and power brace. So I think last week you had said that Bodie, you know, he said
Booty.
that they changed out their transmission in, what was it, like 32 minutes or something?
Yeah. 38 minutes, something like that.
I think at our peak we would be damn near right behind them, but that's another time. But you know, everybody has their chassis preference of what they like, and I think that as long as you stick with what you want, I mean, I wouldn't say necessarily stop. If somebody wants a 3-cylinder turbo Mirage, fucking go for it. Be the first if that's what your thing is. But know that there's going to be a lot of R&D and trial and error and wasted money.
I think that you hit the R&D and trial and error thing, knowing what chassis you're starting with, but then also knowing what that chassis is designed for. And I think that a lot of us, you know, myself included, it's like, okay, cool. You're going to buy a R32 or R33. All right, great. I've never owned a GTR, right? I've never had the all-wheel drive RB26 version, right? The difference between an R33 GTR and a GTST is more than just the turbo setup and the all-wheel drive setup, right? There's a lot more that goes into that car that was designed by some very smart people at Nissan to make that car make 260 horsepower in
smart is debatable.
Yeah, and so I think that like a lot of us, right, don't come from I can afford the top of the line performance model to start with, but I want to take what I have, make it mine, make it into something impressive, and then make it cool. And I think that we forget that like a 3 Series BMW is not an M3. An M3 is not an M3 comp. A Porsche Cayman does not match a 911, right? There's all sorts of things that kind of like go on those. And it's like, it's cool. Great car to own. Buy a Cayman if you can. Buy a Miata if you can. Buy an S13. You know, like whatever car it is that you enjoy that's a good entry level for you to be able to get where you want to get. But then understand that like the number of people I know who have Miatas that are racing guys at, you know, high horsepower levels are very low. There's a lot of guys who have Miatas that are very quick because they handle well and they do well. They're good track cars, but you're never going to sit there and drag race a guy with 1,000 horsepower Skyline or whatever other car you want to throw in here. It's just not built for it. It's not set up for it. And if you don't select your chassis for your end goal or know how to get it there, you're going to be putting yourself in a problem. I know guys with 700, 800 horsepower 3 Series. They're great when they run, But the problem is that when they do run and they run for a while, we start seeing things like subframe cracking. We start seeing things like overrunning the brakes. We start seeing things like snapping half shafts and axles and transmissions and whatever else like that, because the car's not built to make that kind of power. And if
Exactly.
you go big single turbo N54 or N55, or you do whatever, you're going to make the power, but it's not for forever. And so when we talk about designing your build and talking about where you're going, it's, again, like I said the other day, the balance, right? You make 700 horsepower, but you have a stock transmission, you're going to find out. Looking at what the chassis is actually set up to do and what kind of work do you need to do, whether it's bracing or whether it's, filling in the frame, or whether it's adding a new subframe, or whether it's solid mount bushings or whatever it is like that, that's going to help you to get the power down and keep it reliable. And then kind of, my personal favorite is you kind of overbuild the suspension, overbuild the brakes, overbuild the handling, overbuild everything that makes you stop. And then you do about 90% of how fast you can go with that, and you'll be okay. I know.
Stopping is overrated, bro. You don't need to stop.
But my point is like a lot of people, I think, when we look at how to design your build, don't understand the chassis limitations and where that next step really is, but then also don't understand how all that kind of fits together. Like you said to me the other day when we were talking in our group chat about, a single turbo 4-rotor RX-7. If anybody was to pull that up on a lift and get underneath it, it's not a stock chassis. It's got all sorts of modifications and reinforcement and work, so that anything that was stock has now been made good enough to hold that kind of power reliably over and over and over again. And it's mostly
I think a great example is funny cars or drag cars, right? Yeah. You go back to it, and even looking way back in the 80s, some of these drag cars, even then, it's a Chevy Camaro.
Wow.
Right? Because it's been tube chassied, and it has a slip over the top fiberglass body with vinyl or paint that looks like a Camaro.
Don't forget that it's back half too.
Right.
And I mean, none of that you're buying. I mean, you can
and the
buy
transmission and the engine are actually sitting directly next to you, and you're shifting at your elbow because everything's so far. Yeah. But it's a Camaro.
But it's a Chevy Camaro, right?
Yeah.
And I've had so many conversations this week, especially like standing up in a new market. You're establishing who you are and the kind of builds you do as a garage, as a performance garage. And so you're going to get all sorts of wild inquiries at first, because no one knows what you do and everything. And that's fine. I mean, I'll field the inquiries all day long, because you never know. Maybe this customer has the money and he just wants to do something silly because he's bored, right? And he needs the education to really understand what's going to go into this. But some cars are meant to be commuters, right? Some cars are meant to be X, Y, and Z. And yeah, dude, we can turn your Mazda 3 is a good example. And I think we're actually going to proceed with this Mazda 3 build, because that engine or that chassis, even though in this market was not sold with the 2.0 or the 2.5, it still accepts that engine and that drivetrain, right? So we can take a Ford Focus Duratec 2.5 and put it where the 1.6 liter Mazda was. Or we can take that 1.6 liter Mazda that came in the Mazda 3, which is the same engine that was in the Miata, by the way, and do Miata performance upgrades and put a little turbo on it and give him his 150, 200 horsepower and send him on his way, and he'll be happy. But again, that is chassis specific. Right.
It's a double-edged sword, though.
But a Wigo S, or
I don't even know what that is.
Yeah, dude, I didn't either. I had to Google it. Right?
It's a commuter car because it's literally called WeGo.
Yeah.
And it's actually the performance version is the WeGo Slow.
It's actually the WeGo S. Yes. I'm not making that up.
Yeah.
But the chassis, man, like Corey's talking about, and Cody's in agreement, I'm sure it's more than the engine and the transmission. It's the subframes. Like, I had to change my subframe out to a custom subframe on the 3-rotor build. That's all tubular and TIG welded, because the stock subframe it's pressed sheet metal, man. It ain't designed for it.
Well, I mean,
Right.
Cody and I
Well, we
have seen
spent
cars tear themselves apart on the drag strip. Like Cody and I have
Yeah.
seen cars
well,
that like go to launch and the entire back end falls out of it, and you're like, it made all
it
the
just
power
rips.
for one moment.
Yeah, like
Go ahead, Cody.
something random where it would rip studs out and whole wheels just fall off. But I think
the
honestly,
transmission becomes part of the rear differential. Yeah.
or people don't think about, if you're building a high horsepower car, do you really want to lose your feet? Like pay the money and get a transmission blanket so you don't have,
Yeah.
your flywheel come up
And a
and cut
drive
your
shaft
feet
pump.
off.
Yeah.
Yes. I mean, there's certain things that you just need to do, and regardless of what you're trying to build, do it safely as best you can. I mean,
I was gonna
if
say, you
I
know how
think
many
that's
people I know who have fire extinguishers in their cars now?
Oh yeah.
I'm not
You only
saying
learn
I'm
that
not
once.
necessarily.
You only learned that one once.
I mean, I'm not necessarily saying you need a whole fire suppression system, but
No, but only
damn,
a
if
handheld
you build
extinguisher. Yeah.
if you build a car, and that one time that flywheel comes through, well, now you don't have a clutch foot, so now you're having to go back and redo all kinds of R&D to get some type
Hand
of
controls.
either hand
controls.
controls or get some type of automatic transmission that's going to hook up and be able to make power where you need it. And
I think Cody
I
jumped straight to the morbid over here, which is amputations.
You're gonna lose your legs if you don't build your car right.
Oh, but yeah, the point stands also. I think the key point, kind of circling around the points we're making right now, is differentiate between your street car and a race car as you go
Yeah.
about your build, right?
unless you're building a pro street,
Like I'm just
but you
saying,
got to have a fuck ton of money.
as a guy that builds cars day in and day out, the amount of money that you need to put into a car to keep it street,
Yeah.
right? While going to 1,000 horsepower, it gets real, man. Because on a race car, I'm like, we need a fuel pump, we need EFI wiring, I need a headlight because the rules said I had to have a headlight. Apparently, I need to
I
add
need
a
a seat.
because I forgot it rained. So my driver was actually driving with no windshield wiper last time drifting, with his head sticking out the window, which was hilarious.
Rain-X and go
sponsored
fast
by
enough.
Rain-X.
Yeah, dude. I mean, it's very minimal in a race car, right? Yeah, and a seat, no interior, and a roll cage. Call it a day, send it home, bye. And I can tube the front, tube the rear, bolt on whatever I need bolted on, and throw some fiberglass panels on it and call it a day. Versus a street car, depending where you live, does it need to pass OBD2 inspection? Right? Does it need to pass emissions? Does it need to have an exhaust that exits past the rear door of the car? Right? Every state, every country has its regulations, and now a good skilled fabricator, a good skilled performance shop, yeah, man, we can build you a car that'll hit your power goals and meet all these requirements usually, but your bill is probably triple or quadruple of what it's going to be to do the same thing in a race car. And if you've ever driven a high horsepower car on a daily basis on the street in traffic,
And somewhere hot.
You might want a daily commuter to go along with your race car, because a triple plate clutch sitting in Chicago rush hour is about the worst hell you'll ever experience.
Dude,
as you
that's
start
really
trying to
fun be
push
honest
your
here.
clutch with your
Triple
other
clutch
leg.
is not really fun to begin with. I don't.
Or sitting in traffic in a a bomber seat, basically, because it's your drag car
Yeah.
and you have no AC and it's 110 degrees outside, and now you're roasting.
Yeah.
Like,
I
there's
think
so
people
much.
forget how much. Hey, Thomas. People forget how much.
Thomas is trying to join us.
What's up?
I'm gonna mute Thomas's mic.
But also, I want to, before I forget, because you were talking about this Mazda 3, and if
Yeah.
if it's sentimental, I can understand, but at a certain point, you're better off just putting your money towards buying a Mazda. What is it? Mazda Speed 3,
Yeah.
the 6-speed turbo version, and
Well, so see, in some markets though, that wasn't available. Here, they didn't have the option to buy that.
Yeah.
So that's what they're trying to get to.
I can't.
Well,
I
I
don't.
mean, I understand
I've never
that.
been to the Philippines. I mean, some of my family is from there, but everybody I know drives trucks.
But I mean, that applies everywhere. it's not just the Philippines. There's cars in America that everyone wanted for years and years and years, couldn't have, remember? So they tried to make them. How
Yeah.
many Mirages were converted to Evo 1, 2s, or 3s?
Well, every Mirage was converted to an Evo 1, but that's a different conversation. But
Yeah, but
or
what,
every
I'm
Evo
trying to
1 was a
think, not
Mirage, but
but at that point, why would you do that when you could just go get something like, what is it, the VR4 Galan or whatever it is, and it's essentially the same thing?
I can think of a shit ton of reasons I don't want a VR4.
But
And all of them start with it being a 6G 72.
but from the start point is what I'm saying. At you have your all-wheel drive system. You're not trying to necessarily fabricate.
yeah, I mean,
It's
I get what
easier
you're
to
saying.
put the engine and
Yeah, I
understand
get
what
what
I
you're
understand
saying.
what
It's a
you're
better
saying.
starting point. Well, I mean, that's the other thing. Is like, when was the last thing we had an M3 wagon here in the States, right? And then I was at a car show last month,
Yep.
and a guy
They're
had.
building one.
Well, they're going to
Yes,
have it again, yeah. But there was a guy who came in with a E90 M3 wagon, and I was kind of looking at him, and he said, "Yeah, they didn't really make this." And I said, "I know." So what did he do? He bought a 3 Series wagon. He full M3 converted it, built it out, custom drive shaft, and whatever, and he made himself an M3 wagon because it exists, but it was never an option here, and he built one. Seth,
so-
remind me to show you a picture of that because you're going to want it.
Yeah, I want to see it.
It's that color purple that you need in an M3
nice.
wagon. It's perfect.
Nice.
But you
I
know,
mean,
it's
it's
like,
the same as the the STI Foresters and stuff. I know some. I personally
Yeah,
I like
yeah.
them, but
oh, I mean, I love those.
So I'm going to pause real quick at our 17-minute mark, and we're going to do the drink of the week that my
Oh.
girlfriend invented. And then we'll get back. I've got another subject kind of around engines for us to discuss that is outside of my wheelhouse and more so in your guys' too wheelhouse.
Seth,
That
did
we
you
can
see
discuss.
my drink of the week?
I'm gonna
Nice.
assume it's a diesel.
Yes, sir. It's a diesel. So
Oh.
we've got the drink of the week. My girlfriend invented it. I'm calling it the naughty apple juice because it tastes like apple juice. But it is apple Jack Daniels, rye Jack Daniels, a little bit of fresh lemon juice squeeze, grape soju, soda water, and simple syrup. And it is amazingly smooth, delicious, and dangerous because it's basically just alcohol with some simple syrup.
I was gonna say it's
The
it's
soju
alcohol
by
with ice
itself.
cubes and some sugar in it.
We basically made just Jack Daniels flavored Kool-Aid, and yeah, it's got no bite to it. It's got, dude, it tastes just like an apple cider. You know, you used to drink around the campfire.
That's
Shit, it's
excessive.
crazy.
What I need you to do though is I need you to make some and then put it in the microwave and heat it up. Because if it can't be,
Warm
warm
apple
and
cider.
greasy- warm in the tree stand, I don't want it.
I'll give it a shot. I'll give it a shot just for you. I'll drink some warm
He wants to
whiskey
put it
cider.
in a hot water flask so he can use it to warm himself as he climbs the tree.
Yeah, like a
And
monkey.
fall out the other side.
All right, so
Sounds like
circling back. Now that we did the drink of the week, which I suggest everyone tries, by the way, it's my new favorite thing at night when I want something refreshing and fruity. Diesel engine builds, right? And this was the subject. I've known about diesel engine tuning. It's not something I really had to get involved with in Japan. It's way more popular down here in the Philippines. So I'm kind of getting drug into it, willingly or not. And so I had a client, guy hit me up the other day, and he goes, "Hey, I want a diesel engine build." I was like, "Okay, yeah, sure. What do you want?" "I want a KD2, a 2KD FVE. I want it 500 wheel horsepower, and I want it to be able to run full tilt for 6 hours in an endurance race with a water-cooled exhaust and a compound turbo setup." And then I circled back. I did some research on that, and so I want to throw both engines out there so we can discuss it. His alternative engine that he gave me to work with was the Ford JJ3, also 500 wheel horsepower output. Now, for the viewers out there that don't know about diesels, like I really didn't until I started digging into these two engines. Both of these engines, in their top form from the factory with a chip flash, put down about 127 Newton meters of horsepower and about 300 foot-pounds of torque, factory, right? So not saying that's what they're capable of, but I'm just saying that's what they are off the shelf ready to do. So we're talking about taking the power almost double, quadruple
Yeah.
and then running it as an endurance engine. So with that, I'm going to open it up, and then I'm going to circle back to kind of the information that I found out talking to some of the guys down in Australia that I know, and one of the big diesel manufacturer, like race car shops over in Thailand named Flex, and HPC. So we'll turn it over there.
So
Corey, Cody, thoughts on this?
So
I think-
I mean, it's not
I think
unheard
it's
of.
feasible.
Yeah,
One,
I was gonna say. So like,
He-
I had that OM617 in my FJ that was pretty hopped up and tuned for altitude and everything, and that's out of a Mercedes 300 turbo diesel, right? And those little sedans or whatever like that didn't make a lot of power. They made, I think, 120, 140 horsepower like that. I think they might have made 160 at the like top peak TDI or whatever it was. And they can be tuned pretty reliably to 300, right? Like without really doing anything crazy, a little bit bigger turbo and better fuel setup and whatever, but it's mechanical fuelable. I can only imagine that somebody absolutely insane in Australia or New Zealand has said, we're doing this, because that seems to be their thing that they're doing. They also build some of the most absurd, Toyota pickups and all that kind of stuff that are diesel that make ungodly power. So I know it can be done. I think your biggest concern is going to be, how do you keep that much power? Like at what RPM are you really trying to make that much power? Because I don't know what the red line is on those engines, but I'm going to tell you that if you are limited to 4,000 RPM, you don't want to do 4,000 RPM for 6 hours straight. So I'm not sure like how you're going to be able to get that kind of power.
Well, it would have to be
reliably,
an
constantly.
extremely built head to get that. But making the power, which I don't know much about those particular diesels.
They're small.
I did my own little research and seeing that other people have accomplished it. Now, for what application they used it for, I'm unsure. The big concern would be the
4,000 RPM.
back half of the drivetrain, because from a drag perspective, diesels, they do diesel truck wars, not even an hour from me, twice a year. Then there's a bunch of other places that are pretty close that do it as well. But a transmission for a diesel drag truck, realistically, everything going smooth, lasts 80 seconds.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, you're talking 8 to 10 passes.
You're talking about 2,000, pounds of torque. Like, I think it's a little different,
Yeah, but when you're talking about this, but you're talking about this engine that you're going to be making 500 horsepower on. You're going to be somewhere north.
But it's not like what you're thinking. Like, so like 500 horsepower in a 6.7 is going to make 1,100 pounds of torque or something like that. 900, 1,100 pounds of torque like that.
So I have numbers.
I bet you're gonna be somewhere probably around 700 to 850 foot-pounds of torque.
So I have the numbers off a 2 KD build done in Indonesia by a guy, and he put 523 wheel horsepower down with 1,150 foot-pounds of torque.
Perfect.
Exactly. I mean, it like I said, it's not unheard of, but so in the garage beneath me, because I'm currently at my father's house, transitioning with our move and whatnot, he has a fully built 12 valve with a P pump, a built P pump, that's right around 1,600 horsepower. That is detuned to go into a more or less tow truck, to pull his 1,300 horsepower 37 Ford. I mean,
so
I would say coming with a diesel, overbuild it and detune.
So I want to share with you like the build a little bit that I found that we're probably going to closely replicate. So the first thing I should tell you, and then I'm going to jump down to Thomas here in a minute to introduce him. But so the build, right? One custom manifold, F55 V Pro turbo, and then he switched up to a TE 067 24 valve or 24 V turbo. Boost pressure to get to 500 was 62 psi. Which is again diesel. 100 psi nozzles.
You just put two gauges on top of each other and then add them,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, 100 psi nozzles on the common rail system with a triple rotor fuel pump for the diesel, or common rail pump, triple rotor common rail pump. Custom ground headers or cams, custom head gasket, custom valves, custom springs. Yeah, so all of that, and then of course, like clutch and stuff to handle that, right? He put a clutch in there rated for 800 newton meters of torque, and it actually held surprisingly. But he said the clutch pedal was extremely heavy. By the way, he did this as a street truck down in Indonesia.
I like this. I support this.
He ran a 10.2 second quarter mile in a Hilux.
Good.
But the problem with the truck was, and the problem with the build was, in a quarter mile pass, a single quarter mile pass, the coolant temperature would rise over 100 degrees Celsius.
Yeah.
Because you're putting over 3 atmosphere of boost pressure
So what
into
is
the engine.
What is the Volkswagen Dakar diesel SUV do? I mean, I know that's an extreme.
I think that's the Touareg. I think that's the Touareg diesel, right? The
well, I don't think it's
W12.
Touareg anymore, but it used to be. But yeah, but like my question is, what? That's a very extreme thing, right? Fiberglass body, tube frame, whatever, right? But the technology.
So that's actually
the
what this build is. It's the complete custom tube chassis, custom built car.
So
like
then I think that instead of modeling it in a way like someone who's running quarter mile or drag racing or whatever, I think that we look at things that people are doing like Baja or Dakar or like that, where it's extremely hostile environment, right? It's dry, it's sandy, it's hot, it's whatever. And then how do they make that work?
But I think the issue is that it's the power numbers, right? It's the power numbers that this particular client's looking for. Because if you look at these Dakars, if you look specifically at the VW, they're using the 12-cylinder diesel.
Yeah.
I
know.
So we have triple the displacement to start with.
But their EGTs and their coolant temps and stuff like that, right, are being managed and modified. And that's what you really need to be looking at is like, okay, we know how to make the engine make that kind of power. How do we keep it reliable? And how do we keep EGTs down? How do we keep fuel burn high? How do we reduce carbon, blah, blah, blah. Because, I mean, if you're running 6 hours straight like that, you're going to get carbon buildup. Like, there's a lot of stuff to look at on that diesel side. I mean, obviously, we don't have to worry about the DPF in this, but, like, we're looking at things that how hot is it going to run at 3,000, 3,500 RPMs, 3,600 RPMs, maxed out Holden, how hot is that really going to be? And what do we need to be able to do to, help to maintain that? And what kind of airflow are you going to need to be able to keep it?
Those EGTs are going to be over 1,500 degrees.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Easy.
So what's interesting, you get requests like this, right? And Corey and Cody, you both know me well enough. I usually take requests like this and go, yeah, okay, sure. Okay, let's come back to reality, right? But this guy has built his own tube chassis, coming to find out. I told him the issues with cooling. He said, don't worry about that. Just build the engine and I'll keep it cool. But then I kind of looked into this guy's profile. I want to know more about him, right? Before I spend a lot of time doing this and reach out to contact stuff. He builds custom yachts for a living, super yachts by hand.
I like this guy.
And then he basically said, if you can put this engine in the chassis, like we can get it running and it dynos at 500, then I want 6 more identical engines.
Yeah.
I said, oh, cool. Yeah, I like bulk orders of custom engines.
Well, I mean, getting that power number is not hard. It's going to be keeping it alive.
It's going to be keeping it alive, yeah. And, that's the thing. I could just sell him an engine. I could do that today. It'd be like, here's the turbo, here's the manifold. I already sourced the manifold and everything and the nozzles. But I don't want to give him an engine that's not going to live up to the requirement of the 6-hour endurance race, right? That's just shitty business. So, yeah, here I am learning about diesel cooling, man, and talking to the contacts I have on that subject, which is wild to me that I'm going to build an endurance diesel engine.
Well, it's you start learning a lot more about EGTs, pre and post turbo, and IATs, and all sorts of crazy stuff that you were like, if you understand how to make power in a diesel engine, and once you like go back to a gas engine and stuff like that, and you're talking about it, you're like, I never even considered that, but boy, that makes a lot more sense now. And like,
yeah, and I mean, I have the experience as a tuner. Like I have the experience as a tuner. I use EGTs all the time on like rotaries, right? And especially when we start pushing out like individual cylinder trim on these cars. IATs we use it as part of the VE model. Yeah, I mean, I get it. I know how to do it, right?
However,
It's just
once
not
you
an
learn how to
engine
steer
that
diesel,
I-
then you go back to a gas engine, and you're like, wait a minute, this is way too unbalanced.
What do you mean I can't put 100 psi into this piston engine? Like, right? Yeah, it's
10,000
just a
PSI
different
feel
world,
real.
man. And that's something to remember. That's why everyone has specialty shops, right? There's rotary shops, there's Subaru shops, there's diesel shops, there's boat shops, there's all sorts of just specialty shops. And it doesn't mean that these guys don't have the capability to do something different. Like if they're good at what they do as their craft, they're probably good mechanics. And so they can take that mechanic knowledge and move it over. But there's going to be a learning curve. Like they're going to have to relearn some of the stuff that they know to deliver exactly what you're asking for. So, the guy wants to go through my shop, and that's what we're going to do. We're going to learn how to build an endurance diesel engine right now.
Is it a class that's the reason why he's wanting that specific engine, or it's just because it's easy to get there?
He won't tell me.
So the reason why I ask is because
He
I know
just
that
says
there's
it's a
obviously diesel
a
engines.
small light engine, and that's what he wants.
Because I mean, you could have, let's say, like a 4BT, which is essentially a 4-cylinder.
Yeah,
Which is
Cummins.
neither small nor light.
Well,
It is in the grand scheme of things, from coming from like a 6BT or
is
a 6L Power Stroke.
Well, here's the thing: is it even a diesel class? Why are we going diesel? Like no, like no one can tell me this. Like, are we just doing this to be hard on ourselves? Like,
I think
I can give you a 500 horsepower 4G63 all day long that'll run for 6 hours, no problem.
I think it might
40
be.
pounds of boost into that.
Where did I see it at? I think it was Top Gear. The newer episodes with the newer hosts. I want to say they went to Thailand.
Yeah, I don't watch that. I only watch
or
the
Indonesia. Yeah, they're not as good, but they had the D-Max like race series that they were all running diesels, but I don't know horsepower levels that they were running or anything like that. But I mean, they were running 15 or 20 laps at a time on a pretty decent sized circuit course.
So let's jump down to Thomas, because he's been sitting in his car all patiently and quiet and stuff. So Thomas is a Subaru enthusiast. I would say that he is kind of in that transition point between enthusiast and trying to be a professional, as far as the learning curve of what it takes to be a pro and work on other people's stuff. He's a knowledgeable guy. He's, I think there's still a big learning curve for Thomas to make that big step, because it's a huge gap, man, for anyone that's never done it, going from amateur enthusiast to being a pro and doing it professionally, because you get thrown so many fucking variables by so many people all day long, right? Like, and Thomas, I definitely know, has started experiencing this even within the Subaru group, because I see people asking him questions in the Subaru owners group chat. And there's so many variables that can go into a car when it's not your build, right? And you need the experience and you need the exposure to really be able to answer these questions across the board on this exact subject that we're talking about, designing a car build. Like, Seth, can you build me a 500 horsepower endurance diesel engine? Sure. So Thomas, why don't we kick it over to you, man, and tell us a little bit about your build and your experience and what you think about when you go into building a car.
I appreciate it. Well, yeah. So I have an 04 STI. It's the actual JDM variant. So it came with all the nice JDM goodies that all the stateside ones didn't get. The quick steering rack, the shorter gearing, and all that stuff like it. So, but it's a 2.1 liter stroker running on water methanol. Currently, the build is on tuned on a stock ECU. Yes, I know Seth is literally cringing right now. Seth wants to stab me for saying that. Y'all can hear me, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
That's just choosing to
right.
ignore your choices.
Yeah.
Because they're
So,
bad
yeah.
choice.
It's to make you a little happy, I am going Haltech, because currently the build it's
I'll be standing
at
by
this
for your
weird
order,
point.
sir.
Yeah, I already have it. So sorry, but currently the build's at a weird point because we haven't I'm not even gonna have this current build for like a very long time, because right now it's a stock location. It started life as a Garrett GTX 3076R, but the cold side was bored out to a 62 mil, so now it's technically a 3082, which isn't a real turbo. size, like by Garrett, but it's still a 30R and stock location or front mount. Like it's pretty basic compared to like stateside build, but because I live in Okinawa, it is pretty extreme. Probably in the next 6 or so months, I'm going rotated turbo. I'm going G30 770.8, custom front mount piping, Haltech, and I'm still staying Watermeth. I mean, it's even still compared, it's still relatively simple compared to all the stateside builds because you have all stateside guys making 900,000 wheel.
So what was your goal with the car when you designed this?
I want it to be a cornering car. So it's still, I still keep response in mind while going bigger because I want a broad power band, which is what I have currently because it's a twin scroll turbo. It's not a single scroll turbo, so I get that much better response versus that single scroll.
It's like we had a whole discussion on twin scrolls once.
Yeah.
So that's obviously why you also went stroker, right? The extra 0.1 displacement will actually help make a difference in spool.
It makes a huge difference in spool because I just put my HKS header on, and the turbo only spools at like I'm pretty much full boost at like 4,000, 42, like somewhere around there. So it helps a ton. It is.
You need that Haltech.
Yeah.
You need that Haltech in there to speed that up, man. There's some tricks you can do with boost control strategies that I'm not.
Well, it's not 100% done yet, so it's not 100% fully tuned yet, but it is. Once it gets there, we should be reaching in the upper 27, 28, 29 psi area.
Nice. Yeah, just make sure your fuel pumps can handle it. I can tell you that most of those fuel pumps start dropping off around 26 psi on a single pump setup from experience. So even the 450s, I think I lost my 450s at 26 psi on my 9274 build. So good on you. Your build sounds solid. We've discussed your build offline a few times, both at my old shop and in the owners group with Kevin. So it sounds like you're on track, man, to do what you want to do. Obviously a ton of money and time put into that. I know a lot of the stuff you bought from me, except your Haltech that you were supposed to order, you dick.
Sorry.
So it's okay. To be fair, he also got on me today because I bought parts without knowing that he could get them for me, and I was like, "I'm sorry."
Way to support small business.
He's like, "Well, I'm a distributor," and I was like, "All right, listen, man, you're not wrong, but like,
yeah, support small business."
Whatever.
No, but I mean, it's a pretty solid build. Like, I really wish more people. I really wish more people, at least here in Okinawa, would build more STIs and Evos and S chassis because, like, I've driven an R32 GTR. I've driven a Mark IV Supra. I've driven both heavily modified JZXs with turbos and cams and pretty stock JZXs, and they're all just like really slow.
Well,
so I will say something.
I would say that
there's almost nobody in Oki right now who builds cars the way they used to.
That's correct, because I left.
There's a very fast Subaru. There is some very fast cars out there, but the majority of the guys who really built the cars that, like the R32s that were really quick, have left. And
Meadows' car was super quick.
Well, not only that, there's cars that haven't probably left the garage in 8 to 10 years that could get running. I mean,
that's true. I do know a guy.
There's a lot of people in Okinawa that don't even know who Mr. Ed
So Thomas, just so you know, man, like Corey was back there with me in like 2014 or so.
Yeah.
I think Corey has owned every car in Okinawa at some point. Seriously,
I don't know about that. I never had a Subaru. I messed
between
up.
Between you and Ian and John Mack, I think you guys owned every fucking car in Okinawa.
Speaking of that, you should see John Mack's recent post in Oki Monsters.
I saw it. I saw it. Definitely the GR Hilux. And then Cody just went through cars like crazy. Cody is also currently frozen.
That is not true at all, because I went.
Alteza, JZX. Cosmo
I had a-
FC. That was like
Hey,
a
I
3
had
month. That was like a 3 month period.
The
I had a
Subaru.
Subaru wagon, two
But also,
Altezas.
oh, I had my
Which
Subaru
honestly,
wagon there too.
that was my favorite car, to be quite honest with you. That little Altezza, because I didn't necessarily give a shit about it,
Yeah.
and it
Well,
was
Thomas,
fun
that
to
sounds
learn
like a really
with.
cool build, dude, and it sounds like a really cool car. And you're right. I wish more people would build cars that actually can handle and make sense, especially on coral roads and an island that's about this big.
Yeah, so
You know, yeah.
You know,
for
the other
me,
thing that
I'm just
Thomas,
trying to
the
say
other
that,
thing
like,
we got to keep in mind, dude, is Thomas's experience in
Let the
Okinawa
man
is vastly
talk,
different.
Seth.
Shh, no, that's a great picture. Screenshot that. Uh, so yeah, I can't.
It just gets better the more you look.
I'm gonna. Where's my snipping tool? Hold on. We'll just snip that for him. I'll send that to him later. Beautiful. That'll be the new banner for him. What I was saying is, you know, Thomas is right on point, man. And Thomas has put a lot of research into his build. If you had known Thomas back when he first got to Island and where he's at now knowledge wise, and he's revised his build probably like 6 times, which for the guys out there that are building your car for the first time, like, you're gonna do that. You're gonna change your build midstream probably like 4 times if you're actually researching it. Unfortunately, it looks like we lost Thomas, but maybe he'll dial back in.
His head
But
gaskets.
his piston rings. So, but what I was saying is, you know, it's not fair for us to sit here and look at the builds that we had when we were in Japan versus the builds they had, because they're in our entire build cost just to get the car now. You know,
Yeah.
we've talked about it before.
I mean-
I paid $9,000 for my FD. I paid like nine grand also for my GTR.
I mean,
So
I paid.
I know
Thomas-
when I got there, having
Thomas,
a twin
welcome back.
turbo 6-speed
sorry, my phone
Mark
overheated.
IV was you know, $12,000.
dude, I mean,
So
I
what
paid
we were
11
talking
grand for. I paid 11 grand for my Land Cruiser.
Yeah. So what we were talking about, Thomas, is, you know, comparing our time in Japan to your guys' time, like you and the other guys that are currently out there, it's just not a fair comparison, because what you guys are currently paying for the car itself, the chassis, is what we paid for our entire build. You know, when
Yeah,
my GTR cost me $9 grand. Yeah, it's not a fair comparison.
I was gonna mention that and say that, like, I think like now it is a hard time because of the prices. Because I mean, like, for what I'm into my build, right, into my whole build, I'm about as much as a stock S15 spec R. So right now, currently, people are buying them for about 23, 25 grand.
Yeah, which is insane. That's insane.
Yeah,
We used to pay
They
like
were
trust me, I know.
$6,000.
I
by
know.
the way.
Yeah,
I bought
can
I
thank
bought
the-
my
you can
my
thank all the
S13
Americans
for
for that.
$1,500.
Dude, I bought my S13 for $8 grand after it was done.
Well,
Yeah.
Trust
not
me.
only that,
The purple one, right?
The purple one, yeah, the one that we hated
Yeah,
up
the-
almost dying in.
the
Yes, the one we almost
Altezza,
died in.
I was all of like $2,500 into the Altezza to drive around and be done with. They're selling in the States right now for like $16,000.
Yeah, and they're automatics. They're GXAs.
Dude, the craziest one though to me still remains to be the R34, the GTTs, and even the HCRs, like the 4-door automatic R34 Skylines, which went straight to the junkyard immediately.
Yeah.
Don't even bring it in my driveway. Just straight to the junkyard, straight to Miyagi's. They're selling for like 10, 12, $15,000
Uh,
for a taxi
yeah,
cab,
it's pretty
bro.
crazy.
It's a taxi cab.
Who
I
was it
saw
that had
I saw a NA Auto RB, no, not even RB, R32 with the CA in it or whatever it was that came
Oh,
with
yeah, the
the very
C18.
base model, like it didn't
Yeah.
have an engine in it. And
Well, I don't think
someone
the
was selling
RB
it the other
came
day.
with the CA ever.
It wasn't a CA. It was a GX. What was that, GXI or whatever it was? We saw one time.
Oh
when we were there.
yeah.
Remember that
Yeah,
little
yeah.
tiny? Yeah, and it had like a nothing engine in it. Well, somebody was selling it for 25 grand.
That's cool.
well, that's like
It's,
Yeah,
it's
they're-
almost carbureted.
Adam Fairchild, he bought that 34 4-door for like
Yeah.
$150, and then he had $6,000 wheels on it.
Yeah.
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 You know,
Well, I mean,
So,
to
Thomas,
be fair, I had
to give you
what?
to give
My
you a piece of
180
Okie history. Hold on,
My
Corey. I
180
want to
had-
give Thomas a piece of that Okie history about
Oh,
Adam
yeah.
Fairchild.
Okay.
So Adam
You saw my
Fairchild,
face.
yeah, Adam Fairchild, Thomas, just so you know, is the person that got all the household good rules changed, because when they came to pack up his house to take it back stateside, he had what, 200 sets of wheels and like
Christ.
six full Sylvia interiors with like Nismo seats, like super highly collectible shit. But he had no household goods. It was just engines,
He
wheels,
had
aero
crates.
kits.
He had like plastic tubs full of SR20s that he was like
Hell
trying
yeah.
to ship back, and they were like,
Well,
"Oh,
not
these have to be
even
drained."
that.
He's like, "They're empty."
He had the blue Sylvia set seats. He had the red, the
The
orange.
Spec B seats.
Yeah.
He
Yeah,
had,
he had all
you know,
that shit, dude.
the 270R gauge pods that go in the doors. Like, he sold all that shit and bought a house with it. I'm pretty sure.
I mean, to be fair though, I got a set of Spec R seats that I put in my 180 from the junkyard for like $25 and bolted in there because I needed better seats in my 180. Like, it used to be a very different world than what it is now.
Trust me, I wish
do-
it was that same world, because
Hey,
I've like
Thomas.
now.
My a guy who lived in the dorms with me before I moved out base at Kadena had a Impreza Type R, right?
Mhm.
That was the Colin McRae edition Type R, World Rally Blue.
Yeah.
The engine blew up, so he scrapped the car because he only paid $5,000 for it, and it wasn't worth getting another one.
No, like, bro, don't even get me started on those Type Rs. They're,
So,
you
so
can't
I
even
had
get
my-
them now at the
Yeah.
auction for less than 30 G's.
He had a
I'll tell you
two-door
like
Type
this.
R in the Kadena maintenance dorms that was sitting
Yeah.
there and said, "I'm just going to blow it up," and then he was like, "Oh, I don't want to drive it anymore."
So
Yeah.
my first car on Okie was a Subaru Forester World Rally Edition that had the 6-speed in it.
Yep.
It had like 25,000 kilometers on it when I bought it. I paid like $4,000 for it.
Yep.
I got T-boned. I didn't know how it worked on Okie, so I ended up scrapping the car instead of having somebody come and pull the engine and transmission. And I'm thinking stateside. I was thinking stateside at the time, where they take the car and you can buy it back. Which now, obviously, I know better
Yeah.
than that. But I could have got all my money back just off the engine and transmission.
Yeah.
Cody, I don't know if we were even friends.
Yeah,
When Kyle and I we went down to Foster
Oh, they're
and
on
we put a
story time
Mark
now,
IV
Thomas.
Supra
It's over.
up. What's that?
So, Thomas, they're on story time now. They're just gonna ramble back and forth.
Well, I mean, to be fair, we stripped and scrapped out a Mark IV twin turbo Targa top Supra because it had parts that we liked, and we all had Mark IVs and we needed things. And in exchange for me helping tear the car apart, I got those the Desmond Koenig special 3-piece wheels that I had that Ian
Yeah.
ended up taking. I got those wheels as payment for just helping them strip out the car because we needed parts.
Well, dude, how many Subaru STIs did we see in the junkyard? How many? I mean,
not enough.
we
Oh,
got-
you probably saw thousands of them.
Look, you could have built a whole car if you just spent a day there.
Yeah.
Well,
I mean,
but
well, remember the Evo that we found with full Olins on it?
I was going to say,
titanium
but I
exhaust
mean,
and
to be
everything.
fair, we decided to walk into a junkyard and find Olin Golds on the back on an Evo and go, I guess we could use these.
We paid, fuck. Oh, and then the wheels, the Spirit R wheels that you and me found that day, Corey, for Ichiman Yen, it was like $80 exchange rate, and they're $4,000 OEM Spirit R wheels,
Yeah.
which I immediately resold for $4,000.
The wheels that I said, hey, this looks like RX-7 wheels. Are these good?
Well, those magnesium Mugen wheels that were on a Civic, or for a Civic that I found that sold
Oh yeah,
to your
That's,
buddy.
dude, we sold those.
those
I remember you
Civic
sold-
parts are the craziest things right now.
So I
Well,
got
okay,
those
so
wheels. I got
John
those wheels for
Max's entire Civic
$150 and sold them to somebody that Seth knows, which hopefully he still has them. But I think I sold them to him for $400.
Yeah.
Dude, I sold
didn't realize-
I sold the Koenigs to a guy with a Evo for like $1,000. I sold. Oh, actually, I never actually sold them, and Adrian never paid me back. But my 3-piece Workmeisters that I had, or whatever that he had on his car. I got those for free because someone didn't like them on their car.
So Thomas, tell us what the prices are like over there in Okie now, bro.
Oh my good. On what exactly?
Just tell us some of the stuff you've seen lately.
All right, so just to kind of like caveat on how insane the rare Honda parts are nowadays, a spoon cluster is going for like 10 grand.
American.
I'm about to turn my laptop off because that's
Yeah, like
there's so much of that shit that we just ripped out and broke because we were like, fuck it, we don't need it.
it's just
It's our
insane
fault.
now. Like you're talking like $4,000 for like 1Js and SR20s, like $4,000 just for them pulled out.
Okay, so you're really big into Subaru, obviously.
Yeah.
We've all had our little bit of influence with them, I guess. How much is a B4 going for now?
So
Like a standard 6-speed B4, because that would really
Oh, a
kill us.
Blitzen?
Oh,
I don't think
Blitzen
you can find a
V4?
Blitzen. I don't
They
think you
never
can
made
find a Blitzen anymore.
6-speed plus fours.
Yeah, they did.
But
We had them.
the Blitzen, they were swapped.
Oh, were
Or
they?
They're definitely
5-speed,
smart,
or whatever they were.
Well,
They were
Wasn't-
5-speed.
Wasn't
So-
Mike?
Those are still pretty cheap because those 5-speed B4s, the twin turbo system one is absolute fucking garbage.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
those are still pretty cheap. I believe you could get them. It's going to be pretty expensive when I say the price, because y'all probably paid fucking hundreds of dollars for them. It's like $4,000 or $5,000 for them now.
We gave them. We actually
Yeah,
gave
that's-
them away. You had to pay
So
someone
I-
to take it from you.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so when you did transition, getting off Okie and somebody had one, they just gave it to the new guy.
Yeah, they
Yeah.
just
And
checked
said,
his
"Hey,
hands over.
Just go ahead and I don't want to pay for the JCI. You pay for the JCI, and I'm
Yeah.
gonna drive it for 2.5 more weeks, and then you can have it."
So, in fairness, it wasn't just the Subarus. I mean, if it wasn't a GTR,
Yeah.
basically the Skyline was garbage.
Oh yeah.
I mean, people would be like, I have an RB25. You'd be like, fucking peasant.
Look,
Get
Dude,
them.
when I bought that 33 for $3,000 off some kid, and some guy was like, "Why would you ever buy an R33?" And I was like, "Oh, I mean, damn it, it's a car. I needed one." And he's like, "Yeah, but it's an RB25. Like that's the stupidest car you could ever buy." It was a freaking. This is what makes me mad now. Is it was an S2 that had all the things. I mean, the chassis was a little rotted out, but like the underpinnings were a great car. And I'm like thinking about it now. I was like, I would love to have that RB25 back.
Yeah,
I would
that's.
love to
I
have
mean,
everything
that's my current drift car is an R33 RB25 S2.
I know.
when
That's what
I
used to
left
have.
there,
It's probably
right
my old
before I-
car as much as my old car got around.
well, right before I left there, I had that JZX 100 TRD.
Yeah.
I sold the cluster out of it to Matt Kramer, or no, I can't remember who I sold it. I know I sold him the steering wheel because there was a TRD steering wheel in there, but I sold the car for like $3,500.
Yep. And I built that
And now,
car.
and you know, Adrian put his up in the States. Wasn't even a not even a TRD. Obviously, it's built a way more, but it was. He put his up for what, 25,000, something
Yeah.
like that.
And they're
So
normally
your
going
old
for
car-
20, 25.
So your old car, Cody, we rebuilt the engine in that for Kyle. We put an EFR on it, top mount, custom intercooler setup, custom downpipe, Haltech ECU, radium fuel system, CP pistons. So we forged the block, we did the head, and we sold. I think he sold that one for 32, fully built.
Well, you know, and then I transferred that FC over to that kid, which I don't remember his name,
Yeah.
and got his Cosmo and drove that around for a little bit. Then that
Best
was
trade
sold to
Josh, and then we built that, and then Josh set it on fire
yeah.
twice.
And the one that really sucks, by the way, is the fact that Will Wilson sold his Unos Cosmo with the 20B and everything that was so perfectly put together.
Yeah.
Car that got away. He offered it to me for next to nothing because he worked in my shop and was like, "Hey man, you know, if you ever want it," and I'm like, "Yeah, I don't know, man. I don't know if that'd be a cool enough car." And now it's like I would kill to have that Cosmo.
Dude, the flying
Yeah.
pad.
Oh, Cody's buffering. Cody's frozen.
Yeah, but trust me, I would wish to have that kind of like prices here again, because like for me, like I want to build an Evo, I want to build, and I mean like so here in Okinawa, that's kind of really it. All I want to build is an Evo and an STI, but when I get back to the States, I want to build a 5.0 Mustang. Currently, that's also kind of it too, and then a Honda. So I want a Honda.
I want you to build a cappuccino, bro.
A Brappuccino.
Yeah, a Brappuccino with a
No.
rotary in it. It's about time you learned how to build a real engine.
I want a Honda, but those are even fucking crazier because, like,
So,
buying a Honda now,
so,
like, even just an SIR, they're like 15 grand.
So what's crazy,
So
and this is
I
something
thought-
that Matt Kramer noticed, Honda EGs and EKs are fucking every 15 feet down here in the Philippines, bro. I can pick
Like-
up an EG or an EK for literally pennies.
Right,
Uh,
but like the actual performance model or just a base
Doesn't
model?
matter. It's a Honda.
Oh.
It's a fucking Lego. You just import it and then put the performance engine in it.
Well, okay,
yeah, but so like those
when
those chassis for the EG6 and like the EK9 Type R, they were stitch welded chassis.
Yeah.
And
they
then
were.
obviously all the little different like interior pieces, because I know the EG6 and like the standard one had a much different interior, but like straight performance wise, like no, there is a huge difference.
I want to be very clear about this. If you hand me an EK9 Type R, I'm gonna gut it.
So I'll tell you this: I bought an EK9 from Ian Anderson for $400, and then I couldn't get it to pass JCI, so I said, "Fuck it."
I'll tell you this: the best Honda I've ever driven was John Mack's
Yeah.
SIR hatch that he had, because he let
That
me
thing was
borrow it
sick.
for a little while because I needed a car, and that was the
That was
greatest
the
Honda I've ever driven. in my
Yellow
life.
one? Was that
No,
the yellow
red
one?
one.
The red one. That's right.
His red hatch
Yeah.
with the Mugen lip and everything on it, it was just like
Yeah.
perfection. That car
Yeah,
drove
that
like
was
it was on rails. Oh god,
Yeah, that was pretty cool.
that was a great.
All right. Well, that takes us to 58 minutes. We've
Yep.
managed to save this podcast thanks to Thomas joining us and talking about sideways engine things and Corey.
Yeah.
Um,
Hey, listen. Boxers are just like rotaries. They're just too common to be niche. That's all.
no, rotary is better.
So they-
in
They
every
are
way.
they
You just call
no,
it a
break
hip
they
solid
are
rotary?
a different motor that has different sets of running standards versus like a straight four
Look,
or like a V8.
Subaru can say whatever they want to say. The reality is that they're just wannabe Porsches. They forgot where to put the engine. It's okay.
That's true.
And I mean,
Listen,
they're
they're-
similar. They both
You're just
break
a
all the time.
backwards Porsche.
You're just a backwards Porsche.
Hey,
Hey, you know what? If you drive in reverse really fast, you might get some good handling out of it, like a Porsche,
or get snap oversteer.
or get snap oversteer. All right,
Hey,
guys.
then
with
it'll be
that,
the same way. The Widowmaker.
yeah.
So it's still a
With
Subaru.
that,
All right.
we're gonna wrap it up this week. Next week, I'm gonna try and get my buddy on. We'll keep talking about building cars or something. I don't know. We'll figure out what we're talking about. We don't know. We make this shit up when we're drinking. Not Corey. Me and Cody
Sadly.
make shit up when we're drinking. So we'll go back to this. I'm gonna try and get my buddy on who builds drag mini trucks. He's currently working on a Chevy Love, I think, right now that he's tube chassising and putting like a 454 in or something ridiculous. Yeah, I don't know. He's weird. So anyway, we'll get back to you guys. We'll see you next week. Thanks for tuning in. For those that did, we appreciate the comments and the live streams. Lots of action over on Facebook or on Instagram this week. So we look forward to seeing you guys next week. Cheers.